I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Ryan Rusnak. I'm Planning Director for the City of North Liberty. Kind of obviously in the planning department, kind of see the day-to-day planning world in the City of North Liberty. And I handle all of the rezoning applications that come in. And we have a process by which, before we receive an application for a rezoning or a preliminary subdivision plat, we have a good neighbor meeting. And good neighbor meetings are for the purpose of first notifying the community of a proposed development, allowing the developer to describe the proposed development and get any feedback that you may have that they can take into consideration before they actually submit their application. So I think it's important to note that the city hasn't received an application yet. We've kind of seen some concepts from the developer. We've provided some preliminary concepts on that. But this is step one in the process, and step two is submitting an application. So I just want to be clear about that. The reason a rezoning application is required is I'm getting a little bit of weird feedback here.
Sorry, if everybody who is not presently speaking mutes their mics, it might help with some of that feedback.
Cool. Thanks, Derek. So this property that they're looking at right now is zoned commercial. And in our zoning regulations, we do not allow residential outright in commercial zoning. You have to do what we call a planned area development, and that allows for basically submittal of a site plan through basically a rezoning process, and it allows some variation of some of our regulations. The planned area development specifically says that you can allow for residential development. So in this case, the underlying zoning is commercial, and they are contemplating submitting an application for a planned area development, which goes through a process, essentially the same thing as a rezoning. Goes in front of our planning commission. Planning commission makes a recommendation. Then it moves forward to city council. In order for any rezoning to be approved, it's got to be through 3 readings in our city council. And there's opportunity for public input at all of those meetings. And I encourage you to participate in local government. The soonest this application could be considered would be the April 6th, 2021 Planning Commission. And assuming it goes to that, our Planning Commission meets the first Tuesday of every month. And then assuming the Planning Commission considered it then subsequently it'd move on to City Council for its own round of meetings. So again, my name is Ryan Rusnak. I'm not very hard to find on the City of North Liberty's website. Feel free to ask me questions anytime or reach out to me anytime throughout this process, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon and his team.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'll just do a quick intro, and then I'll hand it over to my team to kind of walk through the project. But as Ryan mentioned, my name is Brandon Pratt. I am a lifelong member of North Liberty. I took a little hiatus and went south into the sunshine state of Florida for a few years, and then decided to raise a family and move back home. So I go way back. I went to Penn Elementary School here in town back when it was the only elementary school. So this is my home and has been for a very long time. And I'm excited about doing this project. You'll notice behind me, I have this giant Pizza Ranch logo. So I own Pizza Ranch restaurants. I did not own the North Liberty one up until recently. I purchased it right towards the beginning of COVID. Great timing to own a restaurant, but we've completely revamped it. If you haven't been in, we'd love to see you. But I have businesses here in town, with Pizza Ranch being one of them. I'm a part owner of Tin Roost in town as well, and then I own all the ground to the south of Tin Roost, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So look forward to answering any questions that you guys all may have, and I'll get to the technical side and maybe let Troy start. Troy's my civil engineer, and I'll hand the reins over to him. So thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Brandon. Let me get my share screen going here.
While you're pulling that up, Troy, I should have made mention. my wife and I adopted 4 boys from Brazil, and they are now going to Penn Elementary, which is where I went. So it's pretty cool to see that come full circle. I should have mentioned that earlier. I'm very proud of the 4 boys. So go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, and a good story all around there. Okay, well, again, thanks all for joining. This is a great opportunity for us as the development team to introduce our project to you all, and certainly offer the opportunity for questions. And I'll just I'll do my best to run through the entire project and just spend a few minutes, not dig too deep into the details, but then we'll welcome you to bring up your questions at the end of that. And Ryan will work us through that. We do have the entire or many of our project team here, Brandon being the owner, myself as a civil engineer. So I'm dealing with the stuff on the kind of around the building and the survey side of it. We have our architect, one of the architects with us, and then we also even have part of the construction team, the general contractor is represented on the call today. So hopefully we can answer most of your questions. I will say we are, we're digging right into the details, but we are, as Ryan mentioned, at the early stages. So, we don't have the entire building designed, we don't have the entire site designed, but we have some concepts that or I guess preliminary design that we'll review with you. So on the screen is the subject property. You can see here's the Tin Roost, a very notable project or site here in town. So you can see generally where this project sits, and I'll show you the lot that actually is here. This is just a small 1.2 acre lot. We're actually going to increase the size of this lot, and it will, our project you'll see here in a bit will actually take up a little over 2 acres. So we're going to move this lot line up north. The existing property, zoned commercial, some features on the site. It actually has a little bit of pavement on the property already. We're going to use as much of that as we can. It has a trail, a public access that runs through it. And one of the things that we hope, and you all probably that live in the area are very familiar with, is this very pedestrian friendly environment. We want to design a facility that utilizes that and benefits our residents and our potential commercial users in the pedestrian environment as well. So we see that very much as a feature benefit of this site. We're just off of Community Drive. The city has public utilities out there in the right of way, the public right of way, just like you would expect, sewer, water owned by the city, and then other franchise utilities that we will connect to. When this is one of the last projects or one of the last lots here to develop, so as you might expect, we have access to most of the utilities, and they're sized appropriately to accommodate that. There is stormwater detention provided within the existing pond here. So as you can see on many of these lots, they don't have individual stormwater detention. We'll be utilizing that. So I'll bring up our site plan here. So here is our proposed site plan. It includes 2 buildings. We will likely develop this in 2 phases. Phase 1 being a 4-story residential building here. And then the second phase would be a commercial single-story building here. Part of the planned area development is that it allows us some ability to do some unique things with the property that we hope is mutually beneficial for many of us, for the city, for the users, and for the developer. We will have some of this parking will be shared. We look at all those details. We want to make sure we provide enough parking and utilities for our users. But as you might imagine, a commercial user may not use the parking in the same way that a residential user would, in the same way that maybe a restaurant would. So there's opportunity for us to share parking, and that benefits all of us. Other parts of the proposed, so we would access Community Drive here. Again, this is a preliminary plan, but it gives a few details. We would landscape similar in nature to what you see on the Tin Roost site or the neighbors. We would provide utilities to the public way and likely have some shared utilities to a certain extent between our two buildings. As I mentioned earlier, the lot size will grow. So right through here is our current lot line, and we will be moving that lot line up somewhere to the north, approximately this location, to give us somewhere near 2 acres. And again, this 2-acre single lot would have the 2 buildings on it. As Ryan mentioned earlier, this building would be 4 stories of solely residential. I'll show you an elevation view of that building in just a second. And this building would be commercial only, single story. As part of the site plan process, we are to provide lots of details, which we don't have complete yet, but it includes landscaping, it includes grading, addressing stormwater, how do we get utilities in and out, that sort of thing. Those are all details that we work through city staff with, and we're well on our way, but we don't have those complete yet. As I mentioned earlier, the pedestrian environment. So our building has multiple accesses, as you might imagine. With the public trail running right next to our building, we'll have a couple accesses hitting that trail. We have an access out the rear side of the building, and then access out of what you might call the west or northwest side that would access the trail through this area. This would all be private property. This trail would remain public. I'll jump to the building. So similar to the civil site plan, our building plans are just getting started, but this is some information that we provided the city recently. This gives you a better handle on what the building would look like. This top view is the front of the building. This would face Community Drive. You can see the 4 stories, and I'll let the architect get into some details later. If you all have some specific questions, I'll just give you the basics here. The building materials is a mix of materials. We have some precast stone, some brick, and plenty of glazing and glass. There's also some hardy board that goes, I think, specifically in these areas. So the mix of materials kind of softens the look a little bit. Of course, I'll let them speak to the details of that. There are decks that will be installed on some of the units. You'll see those, some on the front and as many as we can on the back. There's some great views off the back, as probably many of you are familiar with. So we want to provide that amenity to our residents. So this view here shows the rear of the building, similar materials, somewhat similar look, you might say. More decks looking off the back. Here are some side elevation views just to show that we kind of get that similar look and similar materials with egresses off each end of the building. The commercial building, we don't have an elevation view for that yet, just because it is our phase 2. But as with any site plan and especially a planned area development overlay district, we're required to submit pretty thorough information prior to any construction. And so we will be submitting an elevation view of that proposed commercial building, and it will be similar in nature to this building. We're just still working through those details. I believe that summarizes the items that I had on my list. And so I would hand it back to Ryan and allow any questions to head our way.
Okay, so I appreciate the project overview, Troy. I think you did a pretty good job. So does anybody have any questions? I mean, I know we have about, I think, maybe three groups that are not kind of city or developer. So, I mean, does anybody have any questions about this project or concerns, or please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Carol Solberg at 797 West Cherry, and I'm just wondering if the building will have an elevator, the 4th story. And also, how do you intend to separate commercial and residential areas of this,
So
like with a berm or plantings or?
Go ahead, guys.
Hey, Carol, this is Brandon. I can answer your first question pretty easily. We are going to have an elevator. We think that's important and obviously adds to the rentability of the building. And, we want to be able to hit different tenants in all areas and all class and age groups, and definitely think that having an elevator is important, and we're including that. So yes, absolutely. We're working with trying to come up with some designs between the commercial and the single family. Obviously, we're going to have those walking trails. I think that's incredibly important for connectivity for everybody. And then we'll be landscaping it. Phase 2, I'm not really sure what that's going to look like. It probably a lot depends on what the tenant that we end up getting in there is looking for. But we're talking about maybe doing some exterior things as long as the city approves, with areas for people to be able to gather, whether it's picnic tables and bike racks, and obviously some sort of a biking element. It's pretty important, being on the amazing trail that ties all of our communities together. But we can do a lot of things with berms and landscaping. So that's probably where the route will take.
Yeah, and I would also add that, I mean, we don't have a lot of this in North Liberty, but I mean, this is kind of the makings, if you put residential here, to be kind of more of what we call a mixed use district. And people understand that when they, are living in an environment like this, that they probably want to be closer to those commercial amenities like restaurants and things like that they might be able to walk to.
Yeah.
This is, go ahead.
I'll make one comment. I'm sorry. In speaking with some of the tenants, and obviously Tin Roost that I'm part of next to us in the commercial area, they're ecstatic. Not unlike us in the restaurant industry, it's been a struggle this last year, and we're really trying to create that environment where people can live, shop, eat, and enjoy basically everything that North Liberty has to offer. So while yes, we want to definitely show clearly that there's a commercial side and there's the residential side, we really want to make sure that we blend those together, and so that it's kind of one cohesive project.
Brandon, can you tell us how many units are going to be here?
Yes, there are a total of 60 units. I don't know if we want to go into the breakdown of what those units are, but it's a combination of 1s and 2 bedrooms, split pretty evenly.
Is this going to be owner occupied, or is it going to be rental?
It will be market rate rent. So there's not going to be any income restrictions or any sort of housing credits or anything like that. So yeah, we're anticipating market rent with a wide variety, everywhere from the single professional that's working from home to the elder couple that is looking to downsize.
Well, I apologize. I didn't have the opportunity to do the research on this. Ryan, do you happen to know the vacancy rate on current rentals in town?
I do not. That'd be probably something worth looking into, though.
Especially as the bigger, and this is Carrie Dubay, especially as the big development comes online near the correctional facility.
Yeah,
and I know that's
965
Coralville, but
965 flats.
yes, that's a very large development that will just be increasing the market even more.
My name is Bob Solberg at 797 West Cherry. Do you know approximately the rental cost for 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms, just a range?
Yeah, that's probably not something we're quite ready to share, but I will tell you that it's going to be on the upper end. These units are going to be very nice, solid surface countertops, painted white trim, LVP flooring, private decks, and in almost every unit overlooking the water. And you can tell by exterior design of the building that we're building a nice building. I'm a local developer. As I mentioned at the beginning of this call, I'm from North Liberty. I'm not an out of towner. I can speak to the people up the road, not in the great city of North Liberty. That's a group out of Chicago, and I'm not sure what their intentions are long term, but I will tell you that my intent is to put quality products in place and keep this for a long time. But it will be, to loosely answer your question, the rents will be towards the top of the market.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you also talk a little bit about the parking? Is it only the parking in the lot out front, or do you have other garage type things under the building?
Yeah, we are doing all surface parking. So what you see is what's there. We played around with the idea of trying to go down, but obviously we're close to the pond. We've got a lot of utilities that run in and around. And one thing that's unique, that's nice, is with myself owning the property to the north. And as Troy mentioned, our 3 different users that are in there are going to play off of each other really nicely. So we're going to do a cross easement parking for the entire project. Obviously, the goal, people going to Tin Roost are going to want to park in Tin Roost's parking lot. But if overflow happens, we'll have the availability to do that. So.
Hi there, my name is Kathy Stratton, and we live at 795 West Cherry Street. And what about like the infrastructure for cable and power? Are they going to add to that, or are you going to go on what's existing for cable and the internet?
Because you're going to have a lot more draw, with what you're having, with what you're going to have, internet and everything.
Right. So good question. All the utilities are available out in the public right of way. As far as, we have public utilities, water, sewer, and then any franchise utilities like communication and such, those would be handled individually. And it's up to us as a development team and the owner to ensure there's capacity with those franchise providers. So I think it's in, obviously it's in their best interest to have capacity. I can tell you we haven't checked into capacity of our franchise utilities, but the expectation is that it's there. We have power that we need, the big ones. Communication, I understand that one's always that's an item that is ever changing as far as, the capacity. But I would imagine there, given the local group there in town, I imagine we have lots of options for communication.
That much more surface area, you guys are all running all that water off into the retention basin?
Right. So as I mentioned earlier, this
that's a lot of surface
area was kind of master planned, I would say 20 years ago. And it was designed with the intent that these areas would all drain to this regional pond, which is a great idea. I think you've all probably been to locations where you see these small little detention basins and you just wonder if they're really doing what they need to do. And I'll tell you, as an engineer, this is the efficient way to do it. So I applaud the city for their foresight and the development group at the time, working with the city. This is a great way to handle it, and obviously it's a wonderful amenity for everybody to enjoy. So we believe that's in good shape. Yes.
Yeah, and I'll add that when these construction plans come into the city, that we scrutinize them quite a bit to ensure that they meet all the city ordinances, and so by the time this makes its way through the process, we, so to speak, keeping them honest. But yeah, that's why we do the plan review and the construction plan reviews, to make sure that all of this meets city ordinances. And so that'll be going on. We've looked at some preliminary designs. We've provided some feedback. We look forward to getting subsequent plans that we'll continue to look at.
Ryan, building off of that pond, especially in the springtime, often, rises considerably up into that rock area, kind of what I would consider out of its banks, not up to the pathways and things like that, but certainly beyond what is kind of shown here. Does the city have a plan to address that at all?
We haven't had, again, we are so very preliminary, but, I take these comments as they come in and we ask these questions. And so, this stormwater pond was designed, and I think Troy showed the area. It's actually much, much larger than that area. It includes property along Liberty Way as well. So that's important feedback. I appreciate that. And we'll continue to look at that and discuss that internally.
Yeah, one thing I might just add to that, Ryan, is, that is exactly what we want that facility to do. Now, certainly if it's causing maintenance, if we have maintenance associated with that, that's another element. But, we design these to stage up and store for a period of time that prevents the outfall from that pond to increase over a manageable rate. So our expectation would be that water surface elevation would change given what's going on in the environment.
And Troy, have you looked at that stormwater report? Where does it discharge to? The pond ultimately.
Well, it's heading south out of here, but I don't know all the details.
Okay, I know we're early on.
Yeah.
What, for the commercial building, what type of business will that be?
So at this time, it's zoned C commercial. We will be modifying that zoning with our pad. With our planned area development, we're designating commercial. The typical use there, I think there's a C2B or C2A specific zoning, Ryan. I don't know if you want to speak to that level of detail, but the city has a list within their city ordinances of allowed uses, and you can view that on the city's website, or we could send that to you.
Okay.
Most likely we would anticipate being, a retail or office or some type of service use.
Yeah, I can answer your question maybe.
Okay,
Yeah, no problem. More directly. Right now, I don't know what's going to go there. I would anticipate it's when we say phase 2, we should probably say phase 2 with a pause, and I'm not sure when phase 2 is going to take place. There is an abundance of commercial property on the market in North Liberty, and unfortunately in the COVID world, retail and office space are very difficult to lease right now. So there's not any immediate plans to do anything there at this point. And if I had to guess, my best guess would be it would be some sort of an office, whether it's a dental facility or somebody who's, needing office space of some capacity, but there's nothing planned at this time.
How long do you plan for construction for this phase 1? Sorry.
Generally speaking, we'd like to, kick off construction, just as soon as possible and get it closed in before the winter hits us. So we would have construction going through the summer and into the fall, and then there would be wrap-up items in the spring. I don't know if we want to get more specific than that, Brandon, but generally speaking, that would be our plan.
Yeah, I think the idea is to build it as efficiently and quickly as possible. And if this winter tells us anything, sometimes schedules are meant to be broken. So hopefully we won't have a winter like we just had. But
so if it all goes well, you're hoping about next summer for move-in?
Yeah, I would say if an absolute perfect schedule, which never happens, we're looking at spring and probably as late as summer, somewhere in that time frame.
What's your parking capacity at this point going to be?
So the parking, similar to other elements, there's a zoning requirement for our parking, and that's based on our proposed uses. The planned area development gives us some flexibility with the parking, as I mentioned, with some shared uses and just what we're seeing trend wise, how parking is being used. The commercial area we would provide parking that's pretty consistent with what a C zone would typically use, which is one parking stall per 200 square feet. And then the residential side, it is a bit of a range, but somewhere in the ballpark of 1.7 parking spots or ish per unit. So not quite assuming 2 parking stalls per unit, just to give you an idea. And it's a bit of a range because we are sharing a bit of parking with, the other facilities.
Yeah, and I'll say, based on my experience with, this type of multifamily development, the parking standard typically is about 1.5 parking stalls per unit. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to, think about a normal house, right? A normal house is a single family home detached is 2 per. But multifamily, you tend to get in situations where somebody may not have a car, or somebody, one bedroom just has 1 car. You get somewhere, some have 2 cars, and so that mix ends up being around 1.5 generally.
And I might also just add to that. I think it's a great question. I think I might just also add that, from a developer's perspective, they want to create a product that sells to the public, right? They want to make it appealing to folks, while at the same time not overbuilding. And so we look at a lot of trends, and I think Ryan would also fall in that category, where he's looking at other projects in town or in the vicinity, and we determine what works best, and that's where that planned area development comes in to benefit both the city and the developer to kind of right size things. And I believe also, being a local resident, I think it also is beneficial to the community in that, I don't really care to drive down the street and see seas of parking. We'd rather see it, parking lots full and used, and not overbuilt.
And then, of course, with the winter that we had, as far as snow removal, I assume there's a plan for that. If there's a lot of snow, you'll actually remove the snow, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think as far as snow removal, that's getting really specific, and I think some of that is yet to be determined.
Okay.
It certainly is an item that we consider, and it's one of those reasons, as Ryan mentioned, we believe the parking need is in the vicinity of 1.2 per unit, and we're going to design up to about 1.7-ish. That gives us a little bit of play. So if we need to store on site, we will do that. As you might expect, it gets very expensive to load that and haul it away each week.
Brandon, why did you choose 60 units?
Well, that is a great question. I believe that the capacity there, obviously it has a number that we don't want to go above. I don't know what that number is. I think 60 it's the more units you can get in one building. Building costs are incredibly expensive right now. So we're looking at one foundation, one roof. We're trying to cut down some costs wherever we can. And really the pro forma just worked out the strongest with that mix. There's other things we could have done to make the units smaller and go with more doors, but we're trying to provide a product that the people want. We're going to have 1-bedroom units that are all the way up to 700 square feet, and 2-bedroom units that are close to 1,000 square feet. So we just felt like that was the right number. I feel like I'm not going to have any vacancy issues. I also wanted to get as many decks on the back as possible. So going to a 4th floor made a lot of sense. That's incredible, as Troy did a great job earlier talking about the walking trails and the pond. I mean, that view as you go higher up is just incredible. So could you have gone taller? Yes, but then you start getting in some different design aspects, which drives your cost up. And so we just kind of played with the numbers between our architects and our civil team, and this is where we ended up.
Okay. I guess I certainly wouldn't want to see bigger. I guess my concern is the number of multifamily housing that we already have in town, the potential vacancy rate across town, not just necessarily this building. And I agree that that's a beautiful pond. people like looking at it. I almost wonder if having all of those decks and all of those balconies overlooking it without any kind of obstructions almost detracts from the users in that area. You know, people walking around and then seeing grills and people partying on the deck and different things like that. Does that detract from the individual out there fishing and trying to enjoy stuff? Is there people out there blaring music, inappropriate music for little kids who are using the pond and walking and things like that?
We'll take that one as a comment. I appreciate it. I don't know that we can foresee people, what they do. So I appreciate the comment. I don't know that there's a good response to that.
Now, you certainly can't restrict what people are saying and listening to on decks and things like that, but I think you increase the likelihood of that with the more units you have. And I think, there's a law of diminishing return. It's great to have all those views for the people, but then what is the impact to the users of the area as well?
Sure. Yeah. And again, we haven't really analyzed this a lot. I know Brandon and I have had some preliminary discussions, in the planning world, you look at something this dense and you would certainly say, this type of product is not appropriate everywhere in the city of North Liberty. Just based on my experience, I tend to look at where areas of the city are healthy for these types of things. And think about, Brandon talked about the commercial market here. And if you drive down Penn Street, right, a lot of it's struggling. But when you start to get close to intersections, right, I call them these commercial nodes. They tend to be a lot more healthy. And so, I look at maybe those nodes. And when I talk about nodes, I'm talking about like arterial, like Penn Street and 965, right? And you look at the commercial area around, it's pretty healthy. Now, when you start going west along Penn, it starts to stretch out a little bit. You got a lot more vacancies. But when you get closer to Kansas, it starts getting healthier again, and I kind of see, hopefully if the University of Iowa Hospital comes down there at Forever Green and 965, there's another node where you have, a lot of traffic and potentially those types of, you want kind of a little bit more density in those locations as opposed to just say spreading it out. And I look at the preserve over there by Centennial Park. I wouldn't see something like this working in there. They certainly have multifamily, but it wouldn't be like this. And so I just offer that when we have a density discussion or an intensive use. There are certain areas, at least in my mind, that a little bit more density or a little bit more intensity would be appropriate.
Yeah, I think these buildings kind of remind me exactly of the ones that are over there off of Kansas Avenue now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually I like those because they did a really nice job with the stonework. And I guess one upside of being in a commercial district is they have a higher standard for masonry. It's actually 65%. So it pushes them in that higher category. So just by nature of what the code requires, it's going to have to be a very attractive building just because that's what the code requires.
One thing I might add, just from a development perspective and just overall where we see how we see development occurring, and when you look at your zoning, within town, the thing that's exciting to me for our development team is that we have this mix of uses, right? And we are more fully utilizing the facilities that we have. So instead of us building a multifamily kind of out on the edge or on the fringe of town, and we need to build more street to it, and we need to build more utilities to it. A project like this that is, mixing our uses in residential with our commercial and retail uses, it brings those beds closer to the services they need. it better utilizes our transportation services and utilizes our utilities that are already in place. So it really helps a community, in my opinion, from a tax perspective, obviously, but just in using the things that those utilities and the things that they've already spent money on, we're just getting better use out of that. And certainly there are ways to overbuild, but I think North Liberty is a long ways from that from a density perspective.
Did you say that this is going to be voted on in April, or when is this going to be decided?
Yeah, the tricky part about this process is we require this good neighbor meeting before they submit an application. And so we're in this weird period of we're looking at preliminary designs, we're giving them comments. So the earliest it could be considered by our planning commission is April 6th.
Oh, 6th.
Yeah. And so we post it on our city website, so pay attention to that. And then they make a recommendation, and then it moves on to our city council, and then city council looks at it at 3 different meetings. We call them readings. And so you have opportunity for input at all of those. So it's got to make it through that, all the way through that process. And it depends. I mean, there is, I guess you'll say, pressure on the developer to make sure they're able to provide the plans that we need that provide adequate detail, that city staff is in a position to say it either meets code or it doesn't. And it's absolutely in their best interest to provide something to the city that meets all the specifications of the city. Otherwise, we're going to point those out.
And then the city council is the one who votes on it?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
This time.
Well, I think we've.
One last
Go
question.
ahead, please.
So if this is an apartment complex, there'll be an on-site manager then with one of the units? So there'll be a 24-hour on-site manager? I mean, if this were a condo building and people were buying these for 200, 250, 300,000, I don't think I'd worry much about it, because they've got an investment in their place and that kind of thing. But if it's a 60-unit building and it's an apartment rental and we end up with, half the units with college students, then the question is, what happens when things start rocking? Do I have to go over? Does somebody have to call the police? Or is there just a manager there who says, hey, guys, this is, I used to be an apartment manager, so that's why I'm saying that. I know what can happen. So that's my question.
Yeah. So we will have a 24-hour on-call maintenance and management team. In the lease-up period, there probably will be on site 24 hours a day. We're still negotiating our final contracts. We don't even know if the project's a go yet, so I don't know that I can speak quite to that level. It's right. We don't know who our tenants are going to be, but what I can tell you is that the rents are going to be at a level. Not to say we couldn't have college kids, but I am not anticipating a whole lot of college kids. And I obviously can't discriminate one way or another, whether they're there or they're not. But I think some of the concerns that I'm hearing from the neighbors, I think our price point is going to probably alleviate a lot of those concerns.
So this wouldn't be considered income. No, I'm fine. So this wouldn't be considered low income housing or income based as far as who lives there. It's just a matter of that the rent's going to be however high, and if they can pay it, they can live there.
It's going to be market rent. Yeah.
Market rent. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
correct.
Fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think it's pretty confident to say that it'll be on the higher side, if not maybe the highest rent in town in terms of apartments.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered a lot. Again, my name is Ryan Rusnak. I'm pretty reachable at City Hall. Like I said, just Google Ryan Rusnak, City of North Liberty. You'll easily find me. You might even find the creative video I made with the help of our communications office for if you want to laugh. But I'm happy to kind of give you updates throughout this process. And if you have any public comments that you want me to share with Planning Commission, City Council, I'm happy to do that as well.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess I did have another question. When is the next good, do we know when the meeting is?
We have one good neighbor meeting and then we move on to the public hearing process. So like I said, just check out the city's website.
Okay.
About, basically North Liberty agenda, and that'll bring you to our agenda page. So check on the Planning Commission webpage, and typically about the Friday before the meeting, we post them. But if you want to give me a call, like I said, I'm pretty reachable. I'll be able to give you an update.
Ryan, one comment I failed to just make here. I'm hearing a lot of the similar concerns, and I want to reiterate the fact that I own maybe I'm biased, but what I would consider the nicest restaurant in Johnson County and one of the nicest in Eastern Iowa, sharing the parking lot. So not only do I live, work, and play and dine and invest in North Liberty, in no way, shape, or form am I going to put a product up that's going to hurt either my reputation or my business right next door to it. So I don't know if that gives you guys a little extra help of confidence, but I can promise you that the tenants that are going to be in this building are going to be the kind of tenants that everyone here is going to appreciate. So appreciate your time. Thanks everyone for everything. And yeah, take care.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.